Hello students, welcome to my channel Bioallyls. Here we are discussing about the chapter Life Processes in Biology for class 10. In my previous videos we have discussed about the three life processes, that is nutrition, digestion and nutrition including digestion and transportation, and also we have discussed about respiration. In this video, we are talking about the last life process, that is excretion. Now, let us look at the excretion process, how it takes place in plants as well as in case of human beings. To understand the human excretion first, excretion is the process of throwing out the waste from the body. So it's very simple, whatever waste is there in the body, we throw it out. But first we need to understand what exactly we are referring to when we are using the word waste. Now, these are basically the substances which are produced in the body, but they are not required by the body. But they may be or may not be harmful. But since they are of no use, they need to be thrown out. If they are harmful, obviously they have to be thrown out of the body immediately. Now, we can classify the different types of wastes as liquid waste, gaseous waste, and solid waste. Let us understand how we can see different type of waste. Gaseous wastes are obviously the carbon dioxide and water vapor, and they are produced by the process of respiration. However, in this topic of excretion, we do not discuss about their release because they are already released by the process of exhalation, which we have discussed in the breathing process. Then if we look about solid waste, then solid waste are basically nothing but the fecal matter. We understand very easily that these are actually the undigested food substances. So that also we do not discuss under excretion because that is a part of the process of nutrition where the digestion of the waste take place. Now, talking about the waste in this chapter of excretion, we are basically referring to the liquid waste, that is urine formation. But what does the urine contain actually? Understand, this urine is actually containing a waste which is known as nitrogenous waste. Now, what are these nitrogenous waste? Let us look at that first. Nitrogenous waste are the waste which are produced by the metabolism of various molecules in our body, such as amino acids, nucleic acids, etc. Now, these molecules are mainly nitrogen-rich molecules. So, when they are broken down, then there are some nitrogenous waste produced, most importantly, ammonia. Now, this ammonia is highly poisonous and it needs to be thrown out of the body immediately. But ammonia is soluble in water, but we cannot release lot of water from our body. But those organisms who have huge amount of water available, for example, the aquatic organisms who keep taking in water and keep throwing out water from their body at a regular level. So those organisms directly release ammonia dissolved in the water into its external environment. These type of organisms are called as ammonotelic organism. A very important word that we need to remember, ammonotelic organism, and the mechanism is called as ammonotelism. The organisms for whom the water is very scarce and they cannot afford to lose any water, for those they convert the ammonia into a harmless form which can be accumulated in the body for some short period of time. That's called as a uric acid. It's a crystallized form and that is released in the form of uric acid. Such organisms are called as uricotelic organisms. Right? Most of the reptiles, even the birds, you can see they are uricotelic in nature because they release uric acid directly. For organisms like human beings who can afford to release some amount of water, not as much as the aquatic organisms, we do not have that much water available also, but we can actually afford to lose some amount of water. We convert the ammonia into a less toxic form known as urea, and thus we are known as uricotelic organism. This urea is dissolved in water to form what is commonly known as urine. So, to look at the excretory system, this is not a new topic for you. Excretory system mainly includes a pair of kidney, which are bean-shaped structure, and from these kidneys appears two tubes. This is one tube and this is another tube, which carries the urine to a structure here known as urinary bladder. These two tubes are known as ureters. From the urinary bladder comes out a tube which is known as urethra. Throughout these ureters, there is a continuous peristaltic movement which ensures that the water continuously flows from the kidney to the bladder. The bladder is a muscular organ which is made up of smooth muscles having a maximum capacity of around 800 ml. However, when it is around 400 to 500 ml filled, it produces what is called as the urge of urination. Beyond that, if it is still getting filled up, then it can become slowly more and more painful. Urethra in case of males has a dual role. We call it as urinogenital tract because it can act as both urine carrying tract as well as genital tract carrying the semen or the sperms. But in case of females, it is quite short and it is only responsible for carrying urine. So it's a urinary tract exclusively in females. Then this urethra opens outside through a small opening which is called as urethral meatus. And this urethral meatus is regulated by a sphincter called as urethral sphincter, which regulates the exit of urine. Then when we talk about kidney, inside this kidney, there are some small structures which are called as functional unit of filtration. One such single functional unit of filtration is known as nephron. In each kidney, there are around 2.5 million nephrons which are present. And with the age, beyond 40 years of age, this amount of nephrons starts degenerating, thereby reducing the filtration ability of the kidney. Now, it is very important diagram to understand the entire structure of nephron. Comes in the exam regularly. You must practice drawing this diagram properly. Look at the different parts of the nephron. To start with, the first part of the nephron is a cup-shaped structure, this one, which is called as a Bowman's capsule. This Bowman's capsule continues in the form of a tube which is initially folded. We call it as convolutions. So this part is called as a convoluted tubule. Then it continues as a straight tube which takes a U-turn and comes up. This entire U-tube is called as loop of Henle. Then again it forms some convolutions. So there is another convoluted tubule which opens into a single tube called as a collecting duct. We call it as collecting duct because it collects urine from multiple such nephrons. Maybe one here, then another here will join, another here will join. So multiple nephrons joins here. So we call it as collecting duct. Looking at the structure once again, we have a cup-shaped Bowman's capsule, then a convoluted structure called as proximal convoluted tubule. The proximal means nearby. So it's near the Bowman's capsule, so we call it as proximal convoluted tubule. Then forming a U-shaped tube called as loop of Henle. The two limbs are called as the descending limb of loop of Henle and then ascending limb of loop of Henle. These are the two different limbs. Then again there is a convolution called as distal convoluted tubule. Distal means which is away from the Bowman's capsule, opening into collecting duct. Then there is another structure associated with it, that is, there are some blood vessels. You see, this is an afferent arteriole or a renal arteriole, we call it as, which carries blood. This blood is specifically impure blood, means carrying a lot of waste to be thrown out. This blood vessel forms here a network of capillary through which the waste can come out. This network of capillary here is known as glomerulus. Then it will again go out in the form of what is called as an efferent arteriole. This efferent arteriole, however, again forms certain network of capillaries surrounding the blue color that you see, network of capillaries surrounding proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, and also surrounding the loop of Henle. The U tube that the blood vessels form parallel to the loop of Henle is known as vasa recta. Okay. Now understand, when you look at the function of nephron, this is very, very important to understand. There are two processes happening in the nephron. That is, one process is the filtration process, and another process is called as a reabsorption of process. We'll come to that process again. How filtration takes place is the impure blood contained in the wastes. It flows to the glomerulus by the renal afferent arteriole, and the blood undergoes filtration in the glomerulus. Initial filtrate passes into the Bowman's capsule. That is, here we have seen whatever is filtered, it gets into Bowman's capsule. From there, it gets into these tubules. While it is going through the tubule, some reabsorption of useful substances take place. A very important term, remember. The useful substances which are reabsorbed from proximal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop, and distal convoluted tubule. That's PCT, DCT, and Henle's loop. Then the final filtrate, that is called as urine, passes into the collecting duct, and the urine passes into the ureters from the collecting duct. I am repeating once again with the diagram. Try to understand carefully. The blood which is coming through this, okay, through the afferent arteriole, will here get filtered, because from the glomerulus all the waste will come into this Bowman's capsule, and from Bowman's capsule it gets into the tubule. But it is important to understand that when the first filtration takes place, along with the nitrogenous waste, that is urea, some amount of glucose, salts, and amino acids are also coming out. Very important, please understand. Means specifically only the waste does not come out. So here we have given the diagram of how the Bowman's capsule is present. In the Bowman's capsule, from this network of capillaries of glomerulus, all these various substances are coming out. Fine. Then we know that glucose, amino acids, etc. are not waste. We don't want it to be thrown out. Some amount of salt may be thrown out, but not entirely. Moreover, large amount of water is filtered out. Almost 180 liters of water in one day is coming out. Now, obviously, we do not urinate 180 liters in a day, right? So what happens is, most of the water, almost 98% you can say, that is around 178 liters, are reabsorbed. Glucose, amino acids, and certain salts are also reabsorbed. Reabsorbed means what? It has come out from the blood, so it has to go back to the blood. If it has to go back to the blood, means it has to go back to the capillaries. That is why throughout these tubules where the reabsorption takes place, we can see that there are a lot of blood capillaries. That's why the renal efferent arteriole forms a lot of capillaries surrounding these tubules. Fine. So the things will come out of the tubules and enter into these capillaries again. Try to understand the process. Now, when they enter inside, they are reabsorbed, and whatever is left out, means initial filtrate minus reabsorbed, is your final filtrate. That is ultimately thrown out. That contains urea or any other waste if it is present. Some amount of salt. So salt, some are reabsorbed, some are thrown out. And very little amount of water, that is around 1.5 to 2 liters per day, is released. So that is the amount of urine that is released by our body in one day. Now coming to the process of hemodialysis, what it is, understand. Before that, if we say kidneys are very, very important vital organs of our body, because its main function is purifying the blood and throwing out the nitrogenous waste. Now, if kidneys go wrong, then the impure blood will reach all the different body parts, which means the proper pure blood is not reaching, and that can severely affect the different body organs. Understand? So whenever there is anything wrong in the kidney, there is a process by which you can test whether the wastes are accumulating in the blood or it is being thrown out from the kidney. If we see that kidney is not functioning for some reason, there could be different reasons for that, then immediately the filtration of the blood is done through an artificial process outside the body. And that's why the machine that is used in this process is also sometimes called as artificial kidney. Okay, so artificial kidney is basically nothing but a dialysis machine, and the process here is called as a dialyzer, or the dialysis is the name of the process. The blood is involved, which is carried out dialysis, so we call the process as hemodialysis. Simple, what is done is from an artery, the blood is pumped into this machine, but the blood is mixed with a substance called as heparin. Heparin is basically an anticoagulating enzyme, so it prevents the clotting of the blood in the tubes of the machine. And in this machine, the filtration of the blood is carried out, and the filtered blood is again mixed with an anti-heparin substance that will nullify the effect of heparin and then pumped back into one of the vein of the body. Okay, but in between, in this machine, what happens, please understand. First of all, this is a machine called as a dialyzer, where a fluid is filled, which is called as a dialyzing fluid. This dialyzing fluid has a osmotic concentration very much similar to the blood, that is a pure blood. Okay, so in this dialyzing fluid, regularly the fresh dialyzing fluid is introduced and some used dialyzing fluid is taken out. But within this fluid, there are certain tubes which are regularly filtering the blood. Okay, how is it filtering? Because these tubes are actually having a semi-permeable membrane. So when the impure blood is passing through this semi-permeable membrane, then that blood, the impurities from the blood will come out into the surrounding dialyzing fluid. Do you understand the point? So I'm repeating once again, the impure blood is coming, passing through certain tubes made up of semi-permeable membrane, but those tubes are floating in a dialyzing fluid which is having a osmotic concentration same as the pure blood, and from the tubes which are made up of semi-permeable membrane, the impure blood will lose all the wastes into the nearby medium, which is a dialyzing fluid. That's why the used dialyzing fluid need to be replaced regularly by fresh dialyzing fluid. Of course, here one process, if you think little bit in details, is not happening, that is reabsorption. Okay, filtration will take place. Clear? So that is how the purification of the blood is done artificially using a dialyzing machine or dialysis machine called as a hemodialysis process. So that was all about the excretion in human beings. Coming to plant excretion, in case of plants, excretion is a very simple mechanism. First of all, they do not produce so much of waste as human beings or higher animals produce. For them, if we talk about gaseous waste, then it is same carbon dioxide produced as a result of respiration, but oxygen produced as a result of photosynthesis. Both are waste for the specific process, but they are again useful. So recall, in the breeding of the plants, we have studied that during the different period of time, that is during the daytime, mostly the oxygen is released. So at the night time, mostly the carbon dioxide is released. Now you may call it as waste because that period of time it is not necessary, so it is released out by the plant cells. When it comes to liquid waste, then usually liquid waste is nothing but the excess amount of water which is thrown out. Most of the water, a huge amount of water, is thrown out by the plants by the process of what is known as transpiration in the form of water vapor. But I would like to show you this diagram where in special conditions such as when there is very less amount of moisture and the temperature, high amount of moisture, but the temperature is very low. In such conditions, some amount of water, small amount of water in the form of very small droplets may be seen at the tip of the leaves like this. Okay, so this water is actually coming out from the xylem vessels which are opening at the tip of the leaves. Early morning or at night time, you can see such a small drops of water, mostly in the grasses and all. Or if you have a plant inside your home, like your Chinese bamboo and all, which are kept inside the home, in Chinese bamboo leaves, you can see sometimes such droplets of water. But it's not that huge amount of water will be there and it will be falling in the form of rainfall or something. It's not like that. It's very small droplets of water which you may find there. Now, mostly the other types of wastes are stored in such parts of the plant which are ultimately getting separated from the plant, such as bark of the tree. Then you have the dry leaves, then the sepals or petals of the flowers, even the fruits. These are the things which ultimately get separated from the plant. At one point of time, they will dry and get separated. So all the wastes are stored in those tissues because that's how they will ultimately get separated from the parent plant. But certain wastes like which we often call as plant exudates, such as the resins, saps, latex, etc., they are stored in the internal tissues of the plants. So that is how the plants carry out excretion. Now coming to the in-text questions on this particular topic. Describe the structure and functioning of nephrons. I told you this is one of the most important questions about the structure of nephron that comes in the exam. Methods used by plants to get rid of excretory products is again a very important topic. How is amount of urine produced regulated? Now, this is a question that often comes in the exam. How much amount of urine you will be producing? How is it regulated? It is regulated by number one, how much amount of water you are taking in. Okay. Then how much amount of water is being reabsorbed. Fine. And remember, there is another in higher classes, basically we discussed that there are certain hormones which also regulates the amount of urine that is produced. Right? We call it as antidiuretic hormones and other hormones are there. Compare the functioning of alveoli in lungs and nephrons in the kidney with respect to their structure and functioning. See, we are trying to correlate the structure and functioning of alveoli and nephron. Both are completely different structure. But do you see any similarity? Yes, because alveoli is also surrounded by blood vessels. In nephrons, also in Bowman's capsule, you will find a network of capillary forming glomerulus. So that's how the structure is slightly similar. Secondly, function-wise, if we see, in alveoli also there is diffusion of gases from alveoli to the blood or blood to the alveoli. Here, there is transfer of waste from the blood to the Bowman's capsule or from Bowman's capsule back to the blood. So, the different things transfer through the blood, but there is a similarity that we see. Some extra questions that we think of are the different types of nitrogenous waste produced by animals, that is ammonia, urea, and uric acid. Examples of organisms which are ammonotelic, ureotelic, or uricotelic. Differences between ureters and urethra. Very simple question as such. Difference between filtration and reabsorption process. Very, very important question. What is filtration? What is reabsorption? The two main processes taking place in the kidney. Where they take place, their site as such, and what is reabsorbed in the kidney. So there's the next question. Which substances are reabsorbed in the kidney? How much amount of urine is produced by human in a day? That is just around 1.5 to 2 liters. So that was all about the excretion, and that was all about the whole process called as life processes in living organisms. That was the first biology chapter in your class 10. I hope you people will understand something from this particular video, and my previous videos also, please go through it to understand the other life processes. In future, we will come with the other videos for the other chapters also in the biology. So that was all for now. Thank you, students.